Denver fumbles through finding a neighborhood willing to host a campsite for the homeless. It could be the most predictable problem of all time. COVID-19 numbers have gone from setting off alarms in Colorado to a slow and steady hum. The pandemic is causing college enrollment to drop, an issue for some Coloradans more than others. And a note to politicians: if you have your mom make claims for you in your political ads, we will truth test your mom. Gather round, fam. This is next. Denverites agree on where the city should build a campsite for the homeless. They all want it in any neighborhood but theirs. 3 months since the mayor relented and started looking for such a spot. Nothing. The latest location, 5 Points, was shot down just yesterday. Our Steve Steger looks at the dual issues of homelessness and NIMBYism.
It seemed like progress. On Saturday, Mayor Michael Hancock said on Facebook the city was looking at a strip of land in 5 Points for the city's first managed homeless camp.
That kind of fed a frenzy, a little bit of outrage, a little bit of confusion.
3 days later, after some Facebook anger and a group of prominent business leaders opposing, the mayor backed down. The city's chief housing officer says technical issues with the proposed site were to blame. Cuica Montoya, who will supervise the first managed campsite for the Colorado Village Collaborative, says there was more involved.
We're fighting a lot of NIMBYism right now. I've heard on so many numerous occasions that I support this initiative, but not here.
NIMBY, short for not in my backyard.
Every day our neighbors demand that government do something different. And we have stepped forward and said we're open to trying something new and different.
When City Councilwoman Robin Kinich originally fought for this idea, she argued NIMBY is an excuse the city cannot accept. Though community concern also seems to have moved the city along from its first choice, the parking lot of the Denver Coliseum.
We need a spirit of solutions that doesn't try to pass the challenge off to a mythical somewhere else that doesn't exist.
I don't think 100% agreement is the goal. I think we live in a democracy.
Last year, 80% of Denver voters upheld a ban on urban camping, and perhaps some of those sentiments are driving this uncertainty about these camps. Denver's chief housing officer, Britta Fisher, says these managed campsites would be different. They'd provide sanitation and services aimed at getting people off the streets.
We need to engage people in what does this look like? I think there's still misperceptions. And when I look at other cities where there has been success, there was a lot of work to walk neighbors through what this looks like.
The Colorado Village Collaborative says that they've looked at about 90 sites so far with no luck. Backing from the community is only part of the equation here. The space also has to be big enough so you can separate people. It has to be close enough to transit so people can get around. And it can't be in a floodplain, which Britta Fisher told me today. She was awfully surprised when she started working on this project, Kyle, how many floodplains there are in Denver and how difficult it is to find a place.
Of all the things that I thought might impact the situation and the city search, Steve, that was one that I had no inkling about.
Yeah, they say that's actually a major issue that they've run into with large spaces, is that they fall in these floodplains. The other thing they're running into problems with is the city's zoning code, which they're trying to work on. It's outdated, but they can't just wave a magic wand and change the code, so they have to try to find something that'll match with it.
Yeah, you want to tick neighbors off, change their zoning. All right. Thank you, Steve. Well, it looks like the state's done jerking high school football players around. You can play in the fall. You can't play in the fall. Maybe you can play in the fall. Democratic Governor Jared Polis's office said late this afternoon the state is approving the public health variances to allow high school fall football, field hockey, cheer, and dance. Individual school districts can still decide to hold their seasons in the spring if they choose. Colorado's COVID-19 hospitalizations are still hovering, just like they have for weeks now, right around 140 patients a day, 134 at last count. The percentage of tests that came back positive yesterday was 2.9%, a bit above our 7-day average of 2.71%. Remember, the deal here is that you want to keep it below 5%, so steady as she goes. The pandemic is stealing some Coloradans' shot at an education. Enrollment in higher ed is dropping in our state. It's exacerbating an existing barrier to a college degree for minority and underserved communities. Arnusha Roy takes a closer look.
A stillness has settled across the MSU Denver campus, mostly empty of students, many who are learning from home. But also this fall, enrollment dropped around 6%.
If this institution wasn't here, a lot of students in Colorado wouldn't have an opportunity for a degree in higher education.
At a bird's eye view, MSU is losing tuition money. State budget cuts slashed its budget. Federal dollars were specifically allocated for COVID-related issues. Some staff had to be furloughed. And why they aren't aware of other universities doing so, MSU raised tuition in the spring while still working to be affordable.
Difficult this year has been. Next year could prove to be a little bit more difficult.
Most of MSU Denver's student body is from Colorado. Around half last year were minority students, first generation, and from underserved communities.
Somebody who comes to college or a university and gets a degree in higher education goes back and contributes to their community.
Colorado has one of the actually second worst educational gap, attainment gap between Hispanic or Latinx students and our white counterparts.
Dr. Angie Paccioni, the executive director for the Colorado Department of Higher Education, said this was already a problem. Then the pandemic, paired with economic turmoil, fed into another crisis.
Our state average is about 68% of all Coloradans have some credential. Only 30% of our Hispanic and Latinx. Only 30% of our Native American, Indigenous, and 40% of our African American. That is a huge gap.
She fears it will only get worse if people keep opting out of class, which she's seeing happen across the state.
Then that gap becomes even more unsustainable.
Educational insiders tell Anusha that they think enrollment dropped because people are focused on earning money if they're able right now, or if they've decided to take a gap year due to the uncertainty. Some are struggling to justify tuition with what the college experience looks like these days. It's tougher on MSU, which serves so many minority students, because they also get the lowest per student funding. Existing issue made worse by the current state of the economy. You all set a record last week. Donated $96,000 to pay off school lunch debt in Weld County. There are a lot of very grateful families up there. I'd like to do something a little bit different for our Word of Thanks micro giving project this week. Usually we show you photos of the nonprofit that we're supporting. No photos this week, and it'll quickly become apparent why. Suicide is the leading cause of death for youth in Colorado. As a parent, cannot imagine losing one of my girls and knowing that suicide is the single largest threat to their life as they grow up here is just unimaginable. The word of thanks that comes to mind when I think of the Second Wind Fund is lifesavers. They are the lifesavers for young Coloradans at risk for suicide. The Second Wind Fund gets young people at risk for suicide into therapists who can save their lives, and they do it fast. They cut through all the red tape and the delays, and they just get the kids matched up with therapists immediately and pay whatever bills result in the end. They've been doing this work for 18 years, and they are in 30 of Colorado's counties. They're expecting a wave of new referrals of kids in trouble as students go back to school. This nonprofit estimates that they can save a life for about $1,000 worth of therapy. Let's go. Text the word thanks to 303-871-1491. Thanks to 303-871-1491. I'll send you a link to donate. Same deal every week. You kick in $5, I will match the first 50 of those $5 contributions. When kids in Colorado are at risk for suicide, and we know that they are in increasing numbers these days, the Second Wind Fund, they're the folks who get them to a professional fast. And we can help with that. Thank you so much. If someone in your life is in crisis today and needs immediate help, Colorado Crisis Services is available 24/7. They are the state's crisis line. Call 1-844-493-8255 or text the word TALK to 38255. We apply lessons learned from our moms to truth test the ad featuring Senator Cory Gardner's mom. And wildlife sightings in the mountains aren't always that wild.
Once I got a fox under a camper that ended up being the next door camper's Labrador.
Oh, but this one was. Colorado Parks and Wildlife has the tale of an iguana that reveals a larger issue. Next. Politicians will use all sorts of things as shields to keep from getting criticized. wrap their ideas in patriotism or little kids or puppies or whatever. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger has to sort through that to tell you the truth, even when it is as awkward as a truth test in an ad involving a senator's mother's medical history. We want her to enjoy good health, and we want you to know the truth.
I will never forget the day.
This might be my most difficult truth test. Not because of the claim, it's pretty straightforward. It's because of who makes the claim. It's not only said by Republican Senator Cory Gardner, but also his mom, a cancer survivor.
Cory wrote the bill to guarantee coverage to people with pre-existing conditions forever.
No matter what happens to Obamacare.
How do my mom always taught me to say something nice, so let's start with a positive. Yes, as we told you last month, Gardner introduced this 8-line bill to ensure coverage of pre-existing conditions under private health insurance. But what Gardner's mom does not say, is that Gardner's bill is not necessary at the moment because Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is still the law. And the Affordable Care Act prevents insurance companies from denying you coverage because of your pre-existing condition.
No matter what happens to Obamacare.
This is not true. If Obamacare were to be repealed, insurance companies wouldn't necessarily be required to take you on in the first place. Gardner's 8-line bill states insurance companies would have to cover your pre-existing condition. What it does not include is this section from the 906-page Affordable Care Act. Guaranteed availability of coverage. Each health insurance insurer must accept every employer and individual that applies for coverage. If the Affordable Care Act were to be repealed, that guarantee goes away. We heard that last month from the vice president of Kaiser Family Foundation, a nonprofit that focuses on health issues. The Colorado Sun also reported that Gardner's bill has no such explicit provision. As we've told you in 2 previous truth tests, Gardner has a history of voting to repeal the Affordable Care Act or limit its funding. Requiring coverage for pre-existing conditions currently exists under the Affordable Care Act. Here's why this is a talking point right now. November 10th, 1 week after the election, the United States Supreme Court will hear arguments about a challenge to the Affordable Care Act, and the justice's opinion, which will come out sometime in 2021, will determine whether or not it still exists.
So, Marshall, first off, God bless Cory Gardner's mom. Second, just to recap, Senator Gardner's plan to cover pre-existing conditions allows insurance companies to reject you in the first place for having a pre-existing condition.
It just doesn't require an insurance company to take you on in the first place, which the senator's campaign is fighting back against, saying that it does exactly that, although based on what you just saw from the 900-page Affordable Care Act, there is a specific guarantee section that is not in Cory Gardner's bill, which also doesn't have a definition section of what different terms means. It doesn't reference what part of the United States Code it would adjust, something that's in many other Cory Gardner bills.
It's like telling somebody you're going to give them an umbrella and you just hand them the stick part. All right, thank you, Marshall.
They're kind of like human teenagers.
Especially teenage iguanas, which is what he is, can be little brats, and he's very sweet.
Which makes it odd this teenager joined the crowd of unusual pets left behind in Colorado's parks.
It's cruel for that animal because they're going to starve to death or freeze to death.
A rescue and a warning. Next.
Smoke and haze abundant across the metro area, compliments of a cool front that backed all the way into the Front Range, but also bringing temperatures into the cool 70s this afternoon. We'll take it. With high pressure anchored to the west of us and that northwest flow aloft, I'm afraid the smoke and haze will be a part of our forecast tonight, tomorrow, and maybe for Friday. Air quality alerts are issued for heavy concentrations of smoke and ozone. Tonight in Denver, smoky, hazy, and 55 degrees. Tomorrow, temperatures warming back to 85. 80s as we move into the weekend, with a cooling trend Sunday and Monday and the chance for a few afternoon rain showers Monday afternoon and then again on Tuesday.
Darcy Mount works at a state park, so strange animal situations are kind of her jam. She'll get a call like, "There's a fox underneath my camper." She goes, she checks it out. The fox is a dog. So when somebody at 11 Mile State Park claimed to see an iguana, Darcy was skeptical. But she went to check it out. It's what she does. And it for sure was an iguana chilling on a guy's boat at Rocky Ridge Campground. I mean, really chilling. Like, way too cold. Like, might not have made it through another cold night. So Darcy built the iguana a little heat lamp set up in her office. It is one animal indicative of a larger problem. People turning their pets loose in state parks, either on accident or on purpose. Either way, no bueno.
They have been at a pet store. They may have diseases that the goldfish itself or the frog itself or the bird itself can handle, but the native populations can't. So you're introducing a disease, a parasite, whatever, to the natural environment that doesn't have the ability to fight it. And it's cruel to the animal too. I mean, if you release a parrot up here, whether it's accidentally or even in Denver or Pueblo or Lamar or wherever, it's not equipped. Tropical animals are not equipped for our environment.
They named him Miles in honor of 11 Mile State Park. Darcy says Miles is actually very sweet for a teenage iguana. Apparently, normally, they're pretty bratty. Miles will be available for adoption next week at the Colorado Reptile Humane Society up in Longmont. So we know that more young Coloradans need mental health support to prevent suicides these days, yet referrals for help are way down. A reason why and how we can help together. Next. Suicide is the leading cause of death for youth in Colorado. Second Wind Fund connects kids in crisis with therapy. Worry about getting them there quickly first, then pay whatever they can second. They tell me that their referrals are down because kids are not in school where more adults can see problems. But anecdotally, they know that calls to crisis lines indicate a growing issue. So the Second Wind Fund's bracing for a wave of referrals as students go back to school. They can help. You can help. Text the word thanks to 303-871-1491. I'll send you a link to our Word of Thanks micro-giving project. We're coming up on $700,000 raised for a series of Colorado nonprofits since June. I'm telling you, your $5 donations each week pile up quickly and do some real good around our state. If somebody in your life is in crisis right now, the crisis line for our state, Colorado Crisis Services, 24/7. You call 1-844-493-8255 or text the word TALK to 38255. Jen writes in to say that this would have been her cousin Matt's 35th birthday. She writes, he took his life when he was only 19 years old. It's no small coincidence that your word of thanks this week is the Second Wind Foundation. Thanks for shining light on something that's affected so many of us, often silently, because we choose not to share. And Krista says, I watch every night, as does my husband and mother-in-law. You make our evenings. How about that? Bringing people closer to their mother-in-law. See you next time.